Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to your Thursday edition of the Post Up with David Grubb right here on Boot Crew Media. I, of course, am David Grubb, so thank you for joining me today. The big news yesterday, Joe Dumars, the vice president of basketball operations for the New Orleans Pelicans, made the rounds with local media. I unfortunately was not part of that group, but I anticipate that in the future I will have my opportunity for a one-on-one sit down with Joe Dumars. But for the meantime, I think this was a very good thing. I want to start with that and just say, it feels different. And there were opportunities in the previous 6 years with David Griffin. We had the occasion to speak with him, but those were few and far between. Yes, Griff was around on media days and he would greet reporters and talk a little bit, but having the opportunity for a long, detailed one-on-one interview was something that was quite rare. You didn't see a lot of those from the New Orleans Pelicans. Primarily, you got to speak at Griff at the beginning of the year. There'd usually be some mid-season update, and then you'd have possibly the end of the year. It wasn't always a real opportunity. Sometimes it was just, us in mass in a group getting the chance to talk to David Griffin. So having some real insight into him and his inner workings was really hard to do. And I think that there was a disconnect, certainly between Griffin and the fan base. I think there was also some disconnect, as was reported over the years, between Griffin and the players. That communication never really worked. And I think Griffin failed in some regards in how to use the media locally to his advantage. I think if he had been a bit more open with us and to discuss some of these things with us, and I know he's protecting the inner workings of his team, and I get that, the bigger part of those types of things, but there was some messaging that could have been done by David Griffin that just could have been better. So in contrast to that, to have Joe Dumars now, having gone on a couple of podcasts nationally, we've seen that. We've also seen Joe Dumars talking now to the local media, talking with newspaper reporters, with television reporters, and giving them the opportunity to ask some questions. Obviously, a lot of those questions are going to center around the things we're going to talk about in just a moment. But that opportunity, that chance that Joe Dumars is giving people to converse with him is setting him up for a better long-term future. Because there may be some tough decisions coming, and there certainly will be. That's why you take this job as a leader of a franchise. You know that there are going to be tough decisions, and you've got to shape an organization. You have to remake it into your vision and try to put a winning product on the floor. And there were some things that Joe Dumars said within the context of his comments that I thought were really encouraging, particularly in discussing the NBA Finals and the burdens of small market teams. And I think we have created a mythology around big markets and small markets. In my belief, the way the NBA works is there's Los Angeles and then there's everything else. Because the rules for Los Angeles are different. When we're talking about the Lakers and the Clippers in particular, the amount of money they have, the amount of exposure that they have, the location, all of those things are advantages that no other place can replicate. But this thing about big markets and small markets is just a myth. Because as you can see right now, we're looking at a finals between Oklahoma City and Indiana, two very small cities. Oklahoma City, I think, is the next smallest city in the NBA besides New Orleans. So when you're talking about these types of cities, we've seen the Bucks win a championship. Milwaukee's not a giant city. It lives in the shadow of Chicago. Chicago had its brief shining moment with Michael Jordan, but beyond that, the second largest city in this country, third largest city in this country, has not gotten a lot of key free agents. It hasn't gotten a lot of success outside of the Jordan era. It's been to maybe, 2 Eastern Conference finals besides those when Jordan was present. So it's not, a franchise in a major city that's done a lot. We just had the Knicks celebrating their 25th, the first time they've been to the Eastern Conference final in 25 years. In 25 years. So New York, outside of Amari Stoudemire, where have these giant free agents come from? Jalen Brunson wasn't a giant free agent when he signed. When we look at the cities of Washington, D.C., a very popular city for people to live in, it has not produced champions. It hasn't gotten a 50-win season. You talk about cities like Miami. Who are the major free agents? And you can say that's the culture of Miami, but that's what I'm saying is that there is no large market bias. It may be from the media, absolutely. I'm not going to say maybe, absolutely from the media there is. Absolutely, there's a focus on the bigger cities by the media. But the on-court success in places like Minneapolis with the Timberwolves, in places like Utah that had it for over 20 years of consistent success, in places like Portland, which has had consistent success, in places like Memphis, which had over a decade with the grit and grind teams of success, and even before that with the Pau Gasol years when they won 50 games, three straight years. So you've had pockets of success. It's eluded New Orleans, by and large. It's eluded New Orleans, where you have back-to-back playoff appearances one time in the history of the franchise. But this mindset that small market franchises cannot compete is something that's a self-defeating prophecy. It's going to come true if you believe it. Absolutely. If you work that way, it's going to happen. And I think Joe Dumars was focused on that and said the distinction between big and small has evaporated for the most part, especially with the financial restrictions that have been placed on franchises. We've seen championships won in Toronto. We've seen championships won in San Antonio. We've seen championships won in all of these locales now. And we have not seen the dominance of places like Boston or Los Angeles. Boston has one championship. They've got two since 1986. Like, really, we're talking about LA, particularly the Lakers and everybody else. And I think Joe Dumars coming in with that mindset and stop thinking about the limitations of a small market. Certainly there are some financial constraints. You don't get the TV revenue that the larger markets get. But there are only so many major free agents out there on the market every year. And I think the biggest difference between any of these, and Joe Dumars talked about this as well, is the culture and the commitment that you have to winning. Players want to win. They want two things. They want to get paid and they want to win. And if you can do both of those things, if one is greater than the other, then you can still balance it out. If the money is a little bit better than the winning, as long as the winning is good, okay. If the winning is a little bit better than the money, as long as the winning stays high, you can maintain things. But the Pelicans have never, going all the way back to its first incarnation as the Hornets, the Pelicans have never been about the mindset of being a consistent winner. And that's where you have to be. And if that's what Joe Dumars is bringing to the table, then that's a great start. Yes, the process probably should have been bigger and different, but ultimately it was what it was, and this is what we have to observe, to critique, to understand, and find out what happens. But if this is the mindset, again, that Joe Dumars is coming in with, then I think that good things can happen for the Pelicans. Because as long as the mindset exists that New Orleans is the feeding ground for bigger teams, that New Orleans cannot get a championship quality team, that New Orleans can't be a consistent contender unless it does these things in this very small way, then yeah, that's the kind of result you're going to get. You cannot be risk averse. You cannot be desperate. You cannot think too far down the road. The NBA doesn't exist that way anymore. There are no 10-year plans. You have to do things, and you have to do things quickly. You have to pivot. You have to understand what your organization is about and how to stay consistent in your principles. And if Joe Dumars is bringing that, then I think that's a good thing for the New Orleans Pelicans. The most important thing that Joe Dumars talked about was the ending, for now, the speculation that Zion Williamson is going anywhere. Joe is very clear in that they can intend to continue to build around Zion Williamson. And I got to give credit to Rod Walker, who was kind of like the first one to put out his story yesterday before any of the TV interviews broke. So a lot of this information came out. And in it, what you saw from Joe Dumars was a real open fondness for Zion Williamson, but also some very real comments about what he expects out of Zion Williamson. And I think those were critical in what he said. I've had really good conversations with Zion, Dumars said. We've had lunch, dinner, watched playoff games together. We've done it all. I've had some real honest conversations with him, some real direct and honest conversations. Then that, I think, goes back to what we talked about as far as the allegations with Zion and the court case that he's dealing with in civil court. Joe Dumars knew about those. There's no way you've had this kind of relationship and didn't discuss these things. Maybe not in the kind of detail that all this goes out, but you've talked about this. Gail Benson's comments kind of echoed that as well. Her defense of Zion Williamson. Anybody can sue anybody for anything these days. Whether we agree with the stance or not, it is clear that the Pelicans are aligning themselves with Zion Williamson and are prepared to ride through this storm. But Joe Dumars had some caveats as well, that this is not about placating Zion Williamson, that this is not about making things easier for him. And I've discussed this before, is where I said one of the important things is that if you're going to make Zion Williamson the centerpiece, he's got to take on all of that. It's not just the glamour and the glitz of having your name be the biggest on the marquee. It's not just having your face be on the side of the building. It's not being having the most jersey sales. There's a responsibility that comes along with being the franchise player. And one of the things that Joe Dumars said really hit home there. I sent him to the lottery for a reason. I want him to start focusing on the responsibilities of being the best player here and the focal point. There are some responsibilities that come with that. Go represent your organization. That is direct. That is a challenge to Zion Williamson. It is a polite challenge, but it is a direct challenge to Zion Williamson's immaturity, to Zion Williamson's lack of leadership, to Zion Williamson's ability to stay on the court. Those are the responsibilities of leadership. And Joe Dumars is placing that mantle on Zion Williamson's shoulders and demanding that he carry it. And again, I think that part of the problem that people have in the perception of David Griffin, and that was a lot of alliteration right there. Part of the problem that people have with David Griffin is that he didn't hold Zion accountable until it was too late. Though there was a record of transgressions, there was a record of failure to comply with the needs and the instructions of the organization, the rules of the organization. Though there was a history of that. Zion Williamson wasn't disciplined publicly until his 6th season. Though we all knew, even if what we had that we know is just a percentage of what actually went on, it's still way too much. And so I don't have a problem with Joe Dumars putting his support behind Zion Williamson. I don't have a problem with the organization putting its support behind Zion Williamson. If this is the direction you're going to go and you're all in on this, cool. But do this. Like, let's not half-ass this. If you're going to build around Zion Williamson, then remain committed to him and try to win some basketball games. If you're going to bail on this halfway through this season, let's not do these public proclamations of support. If you're going to bail on this mid-season or after 1 year, then what are we doing this today for? I get the posturing in order to try to maintain value and say we're keeping Zion and you're going to have to pry him away, kind of like that. But how much value, and we talked about this the other day, how much value can you really build for Zion right now unless he plays games? And if he's playing well, do you want to trade him then? And why are we going through all of this again? So if this is the commitment, then let's see it through. The other commitment that will divide the fan base a bit more, though there are always people on both sides of the issue, I think the one that will divide it far more strongly is the fact that Joe Dumars says Willie Green is safe, that this is his job still. Now, I've made my stance clear on Willie Green. I think after 4 years, he's demonstrated that the things that are negatives about him outweigh any perceived positives. If the positives are that Willie Green is consistent, okay, I'll give you that. He is consistent. If the positives that he's a communicator, that didn't really work last season. It didn't really work the season before. And I'd say the biggest reason is that this team has never lived up to what he has publicly said offensively. Going back to his first year, he talked about 0.5. Before we were talking about emphasizing the three, he was talking about 0.5 mentality, moving the basketball quickly. We've never seen that. So either there's a failure in instruction, or there's a failure in comprehension, or there's a failure in communication. Either you ain't teaching it right, they ain't hearing it right, or you ain't saying it right. So which is it? Only one of those three is on the players. And if they're not hearing it right, then that's the organization's job to get rid of those guys. But I can't believe that over 4 seasons, the majority of the players are not hearing Willie Green correctly. So I'd say when you look at the negatives when it comes to Willie Green, you have a losing record in 4 years against the Eastern Conference, the weaker conference by far. He has a losing record there. He barely is above 500 at home. At home, okay, where you have to win games. In his career, he has 2 5-game winning streaks and 1 7-game winning streak. In his career. Those are the longest winning streaks the Pelicans have had. Though they have broken the franchise's road losing streak, they went on more than 130 days a couple of seasons ago without beating a winning team on the road. There have been these significant failures, the number of 40-point losses, the number of 30-point losses, the number of 20-point losses, all dwarfing the totals of his predecessors. When this team is bad, it is incredibly bad. It's not just losing by 5 bad. It's fall behind by 20 in the first quarter bad. That kind of variance and the Pelicans' ability to lose to bad teams is a problem to me. And if you're trying to get the best out of Zion Williamson, if you're saying that you're committed to him, it seems to me that you would try to get a coaching mind that understands how to utilize him and how to have a more progressive offense. When you look around the league now and you're watching the last 5 coaches of the year all get fired. The last 5 coaches of the year. We're talking about NBA champions. We're talking about Eastern Conference finalists, Western Conference finalists. We're talking about people who have led their teams to 50-plus wins and they're not making it through seasons. And Willie Green is still the head coach of the Pelicans. You have a problem. You are not competitive with the rest of the league when you are paying your coach less than $3 million. And the average in this league is well over $7 to $8 million, if not closer to $10 million per season. If you're not investing in your coach, what are you going to get out of this? The Pelicans are reluctant to pull the trigger on changing coaches. Everybody's gotten pretty much, ever since the Benzes took over, gotten a decent leash. Whether it was Monty Williams, whether it was Alvin Gentry, the only one who got cut after 1 year was Stan Van Gundy. So the Pelicans organization has shown this reluctance to remove coaches, but when they have, it doesn't seem to make sense either. You did this dance with Monty Williams where you said, he has to make the playoffs. He made the playoffs and he got fired. Now, I thought Monty should have been let go before that, but the strangeness of setting a bar, him reaching it and then still letting him go, why? Why do that? It makes you look bad publicly. You bring in Alvin Gentry. You did get a playoff series win. You were going someplace and then you weren't. You had the opportunity to let him go. Didn't do that. David Griffin carries him into the first year of his administration. And it doesn't go well. You end up having to cut him loose. You bring in Stan Van Gundy. For all the reasons that it didn't go well, it didn't go well. You cut him loose. And now you've hung on to Willie Green, which I think is going to obviously carrying over from one vice president to another. Are you setting back the progress of this team? Are you keeping it stagnant when it needs to go forward? What these other teams are showing you by releasing some of these other coaches that they felt they had reached their ceiling with that coach. And sometimes a coach can only carry you so far. They can't get you across the finish line. They can get you right up to the tape, but can't get you across the finish line. The Pelicans are not even in, the lead position here. So I think evaluating the coach, and it does seem, I will give Joe Dumars this credit, is that it does seem that he says that the setting a standard is very important. And so I think my question to Joe would be, what is the standard that you're setting for Willie Green? What is the standard that's set? Is there a number that he has to reach? Are there other internal metrics, like you're looking for an offensive improvement, for defensive improvement? Are you looking for things out of certain players that you want to see implemented? I know we won't get all of the specifics, but if there's a standard, that means that there's something that has to be met. And if it isn't, what is the consequence? What is the consequence? All right. Lastly, before we go, I'm going to address something that I had talked about a little while ago, but I think it's becoming there's a little more noise being made, and I think it makes sense that the Pelicans potentially could target Celtics center free agent Luke Kornet. And I've been an advocate for the Pelicans going after Kornet. I think he's the type of veteran center that you could really utilize. I don't know if he's a starting piece, but as a reserve, you've seen his value. This is a guy who, blocks plenty of shots. He can rim run very well. He has a decent shot. He is a versatile player who has contributed on championship level teams. The Pelicans need good basketball players, and they need experience at the center spot. I think Luke Kornet, I think that there's a number that you can reach. Now, obviously, I think that there are other deals that are more important, and you have to see what's happening there, whether it's part of these trades that the Pelicans could potentially be a part of, and you've got to see how the money moves. But I think a target like Luke Kornet makes a lot of sense for the Pelicans. He's the kind of player that you can use who can play starters minutes for you if there's injury. And as a reserve, you don't lose anything with him on the floor. I think even more so than a Kelly Olynyk, who at times can get lost if he's not getting shots. If you're not getting Kelly shots, his offensive production is, what's the point? He's not going to finish above the rim or things like that. So he has to get shots on the half court. For Luke Kornet, he's going to give you second chance opportunities on the offensive glass. He can roll on a pick and roll. He can pop if you need him to pop in a short range. He's going to give you some versatility with your second unit. And with your first unit, he's not a problem. You can still put him as your fifth option, and he's going to give you something. He's got plenty of height. He's got plenty of length. He's a consistent athlete. He gets off a good second jump. So I like the fact if more and more people are going to talk about the Pelicans being attached to Luke Kornet, if that's someone that they're pursuing, I think that's a good person to pursue. I think that is an absolute solid target for the New Orleans Pelicans. I still think that they need to get somebody in the draft, and I would really like for them to end up with 2 picks in this draft because I think they could address multiple positions there. Getting that shooting and getting a big, however you want to see it. I am a fan of Kamen Malawak. The reports that have come out about him, I think, have been even more positive than you would expect as the process is going on. And I know that tends to happen with players. We see players rise and we see players drop just because of their workouts. But Kamen Malawak, the thing that they're talking about is that his agility numbers and his speed numbers are higher than those of Derek Queen. So he's beating him out in those spots. His shooting has looked far better in these workouts than it had at Duke. He wasn't really allowed to shoot at Duke. And then you already know about the historic level kind of defensive numbers that he was putting up as a freshman. So if you're getting a versatile center like that, along with Luke Kornet, along with Yves Missi, if you got those three, and you're saying, well, what about Yves Missi's development? Man, if I'm getting higher level production from other people, then I'm using Yves Missi as trade bait. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. If there's another place for Yves Missi to play that makes the Pelicans better, don't get over-attached to your own players. Don't fall in love with your own players. There's some that are exactly valued correctly, and there are some that are overvalued and some that are undervalued on every team. So it's hard. I get it as fans. It's hard not to fall in love with your players. You see them every night. You see the kind of effort they give. You think that they're perfect for your team. Some of them are. Some of them ain't. Some of them are better fits somewhere else, and there's a player out there who's a better fit for your team. If it wasn't that case, you'd have won a championship already, right? If all the players on your team were the right fit, if all of them just needed one thing, then you'd probably more often than not have figured that out. There's not enough good basketball players on the Pelicans. So if they can draft one, great. If they can draft 2, even better. But you got to go sign them in free agency too. And the Pelicans in this particular year are not poised to sign a giant free agent, but you can sign contributing and impactful free agents in this market. You absolutely can. And the Pelicans should. All right, that's going to do it for today. I want to thank you all for watching. Please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. Please hit the notification bell so you don't miss an episode. You can follow me on social media at DM Grub, wherever you go, whether that's Twitter, whether it's Instagram, whether it's TikTok or Blue Sky. You can find me on all those platforms. And lastly, just have a great weekend, y'all. Stay dry. Watch out for the heat as well. And until Monday, when we'll be back again, this has been The Post Up with David Grubb on Boot Crew Media.